Hello and welcome to Mint. I'm Ruchita Saxena. In today's edition of From the Newsroom, we'll take you through a special edition on the budget. We'll be asking our reporters here in Mumbai to get you the highlights of the Union Budget 2013. So let's begin with Kaizad, who'll tell us more about the personal tax. So Kaizad, there isn't much difference in tax rates for you and me, but clearly higher tax rates for the super rich.
For the super rich, yes, there is no additional tax slab as what people had anticipated, but there is a surcharge of 10% if your annual income exceeds more than 1 crore. So there's obviously a surcharge about that. Then there is an additional tax relief that's been given to home loan buyers. So suppose if you are a first-time home loan buyer, and if you have taken a home loan, then there is an additional tax relief of 1.5 lakhs, which has been 1 lakh actually, which has been given to you. Now this limit is only meant for 1 year, and it is in addition to the 1 lakh limit which you already had before. So that's one benefit that's been given to you. Rajiv Gandhi Equity Savings Scheme. The eligibility criteria was an income of 10 lakhs. So now the annual income limit has gone up to 12 lakhs. So that's just very marginal relief, and people are not expecting many things to come out of that. Earlier, again, in this Rajiv Gandhi Equity Savings Scheme, you could invest only in year 1. You could not invest in year 2 and year 3 henceforth. So now you can invest in year 1, year 2 and year 3 also. Dividend distribution tax of debt funds for retail investors earlier was 12.5%. That's gone up to 25%. And these are some of the most important key changes for the retail investor.
Thank you, Kaizad, for sharing us those details about the key changes in the personal taxes. But looking at the super rich itself, it's not just higher tax that they'll need to pay up, but it seems they'll also have to shell out a lot more for buying luxury cars as well as big SUVs. To tell us more about that, we'll now speak to Shelly Seth Mohile. So Shelly, tell us, what are the changes in the duties rates for luxury cars and SUVs?
Yeah, that indeed has happened. I mean, people were... quite a few initiatives that has been taken by the government has come as a surprise to people in the auto industry. The luxury cars are going to get more expensive because the basic customs duty has been increased from 60% to 75%. And we have also seen there's also a proposal for increasing excise duty on SUVs from 27% to 30%. Now, SUVs has been one of the only segments that have been growing at a very fast pace. It has been growing at more than 55%. So that in a sense has helped the auto industry to not slip into the negative terrain. Now that with this hike, people are expecting the growth will see some kind of moderation because none of the automakers will be able to absorb this increase, and they will end up passing on the increase to the end users. And also Mumbai being one of the cities which has which attracts the maximum tax, whether it's registration tax, whether it's octroi. So owning a vehicle in Mumbai is going to be very, very expensive. So these are the most important announcements. Apart from that, there are certain announcements relating to the GNNURM scheme, which allocate the FM has doubled the allocation for the flagship program. So, and as a result of this, the state transport undertakings, they will place an order for additional 10,000 buses. So this is in turn going to give a boost to bus makers like Tata Motors, Ashok Leyland and Volvo India Limited. So this is going to be some reprieve for the heavy commercial vehicle manufacturers.
Thank you, Shelly. So there is some good news for commercial vehicle manufacturers, but not such a good news for SUV makers. But another interesting announcement that has come in the budget is, of course, a bank specially for women. To tell us more, we are now speaking to Dinesh and Krishnan. So Dinesh, please tell us, is it really the first such Indian bank specially for women?
Hi, yeah, it is the sort of first of its kind institution. The idea is innovative, but the execution part, it looks slightly difficult because there are many questions that need to be, clarified. First of all, what kind of borrowers will be eligible to get money from such a bank? Suppose a company approaches for loan, will there be specifications about the composition of the board? Should all of them be, women board members? So a lot of areas that needs to be, clarified. And if you look at India, it's not exactly new. We have institutions which are dedicated for women entrepreneurs. We have a large self-help group movement, SHG movement. We have at least 60, 70, urban cooperative banks, which specifically focus on, women for their empowerment. But none of them have picked up in the last 2 decades. And there haven't been enough focus from the government side, to grow such institutions. So there are questions, criticism, about, is it really necessary to set up a separate organization if gender discrimination is the issue? Can't we, strengthen the existing organizations? These are questions. So it's pretty, early to judge whether it will be a successful effort or not. We'll have to see. And beyond that, if you look at the banking sector, there aren't many significant announcements. Of course, they have permitted banking correspondents to offer micro insurance products. That is, of course, a good move to increase the insurance penetration in villages. Also, they want to increase the number of ATMs per branches. That is again a good move. That's all for this time.
Thank you, Dinesh, for taking us through the key proposals for the banking sector. Moving on now to some announcements impacting the financial markets. We are now speaking to Lisa Pallavi Berbora on what are these changes. Lisa, a couple of norms coming in for foreign investors. So what are these changes and what is their significance?
Yeah, hi. So there have been some changes announced for foreign investors. Essentially, the finance minister said that the KYC process for foreign investors will need to be rationalized. So that's acknowledging the need to do that. Also, foreign investors, where there is some uncertainty on who's an FII, who's an FDI. So what the finance minister has said that if a foreign investor owns up to 10% in a company, then that's an FII. Anything more is a foreign direct investment. So there is some clarity there. Also, they have allowed foreign investors to use currency futures for hedging purposes. So that also works well. Additionally, for domestic investors, the securities transaction tax has been reduced on equity futures to around 0.01% and on mutual fund transactions to around 0.001%. So that's very low, and that works well for the equity markets as well. However, despite what was announced for capital markets, benchmark indices are deep in the red. That's as details of the budget are being analyzed, and experts are suggesting that fiscal slippages can happen in FY14, and also the GDP number released in the morning was quite a shocker. So that's a deep red in the markets right now.
Thank you, Lisa, for explaining all the norms impacting the financial markets. But talking of investments particularly, it's the India's infrastructure sector which is in need of higher investments. And some announcements by the finance minister are expected to improve access to funds for infrastructure companies. To take us through that, we are now speaking to Anup Roy. Anup, please tell us what are these norms and how will they improve access to funds for companies?
So basically in this budget, there are a couple of important things for infrastructure sector. First is that infrastructure development infrastructure debt funds will be encouraged, and tax-free bonds will be 50,000 crore of worth of tax-free bonds will be allowed by the government will allow some companies to raise these bonds, which is a very positive step. But the most important thing in this budget is that the setup of regulatory authority for road sectors. That is the problem with infrastructure is that finances are not there by banks. Even the banks are giving them money. What is happening is that because the road projects are stalled, etc., they are not able to take it forward or return the money to the banks. So what will happen? This road sector regulator will be a single window thing, and they will clear all the problems that the road sector is facing, like the management issues and the everything that are facing the road sector is facing a lot of problems, and they can directly interact with the banks and then clear their dues, etc., and all those problems will be solved. So that is a big boost for the infrastructure sector if the road sector regulators take off. Thank you.
Thank you, Anup, for taking us through the norms which are supposed to improve access to funds for infrastructure companies. But another important sector for the Indian economy is the IT sector. And a couple of announcements by the finance minister in the budget indicate that it will spur spending on IT by companies across sectors. To take us through that, we are now speaking to Leslie De Monte. So, Leslie, please tell us which announcements in the budget could actually indicate higher spending on IT by companies.
I think the positives as far as the budget was concerned are more for the domestic IT sector, which is expected to grow anywhere between 13 and 15% in fiscal 2014. On the other hand, the software exports is actually just pegged between 12 and 14%, which is lower than the domestic IT sector. This time around, if you see the budget proposals, there are 3 or 4 things that are interesting. One is the SOPs for technology incubators, SOPs for the manufacturing sector, then SOPs for, increased allocation for IT, for education basically, again which translates for more increased spends for the education sector. So IT education companies will profit from this. You'll have semiconductor companies benefiting from the increased spends. You'll find technology companies getting more business from the small and medium-sized enterprises. And you'll have, with the implementation of smart cities, you'll have more companies spending more on sensors, embedded devices, intelligent software, etc. For the software export sector per se, there haven't been any specific proposals, but announcements like, yes, I'm going to look at the safe harbor rules, which mean more clarity on transfer pricing issues, which dogs the software sector. That could be a very hearty welcome move. And from the slight negatives, you would see that there's no clarity on the dual taxation process. So VAT, service tax, etc. I think that needs to be clarified. So all in all, I think the smart tinkering that he has done with the budget seems to be okay.
Thank you, Leslie, for sharing with us your perspective. So these are the highlights of the Union Budget 2013, and across industries, the voices indicate that the Finance Minister this year has delivered a balanced budget with a focus on maintaining economic stability. For more details on the budget and news and updates, please log on to www.livemint.com.